Okay, good morning. I don't think this will go the full 50 minutes, but it might if we get into a good discussion. So the first thing I wanted to do was to talk about this peer review assignment. So if we look at this, I broke you guys up into groups of 3. And the idea is if you look at each one, I give you some instructions here. And in your replies, you should be able to attach a document. So you can attach your P3 deliverable. And then the other 2 people in the group will make comments about your P3 deliverable. And the goal, of course, is the goal is always to improve the product, right? To make it a better product. You can interpret that as improve your grade because that's what should happen. I've given you some guidance on the kinds of things that you can actually must include. Improvement, at least one improvement to requirements and test cases, one improvement to the UML diagram, one improvement to writing quality. That's where you might, that's the most likely place, I think. I think there and test cases are probably the most likely cases. So let's talk about what those mean. What would an improvement to writing quality be? We've talked about this before. If people are making a claim and not citing the source, right, not citing a reference for it, you can note that. If people are using really fuzzy language, using subjective quantifiers like very important, clean design, easy to use, easy to understand, right? These are things that are not measurable, they're subjective. So you can suggest changes to that. In terms of requirements, you can ask yourself, how can I cheat this requirement? And my experience is that students are often not that adept at finding ways to cheat a requirement, but part of this is to give you practice so that you do become good at it. If you become good at learning how to cheat a requirement, what it really does, it makes you a better requirement writer. For test cases, look for concrete ways that the test is run. If someone needs to put in a number greater than 0, they shouldn't say, put in a number greater than 0. They should say 5, right? Say the number. And how do you know if it's a good test case? Ask yourself, if you gave that test case to 10 people, would they all run literally the exact same test using the exact same preconditions, the exact same numbers? A lot of times students frame test cases as user actions, but remember, you can also express them as attribute values and functions. Now, there's a little bit of a contradiction here in that the requirements, of course, should not embed the design. But once you get down to test cases, you can rely on the fact that you have a design at that point. So your requirements should not presume any specific design, but then there's also a UML in this document or in the software design document that has attribute values listed. So at that point, and methods, at that point, if you want to specify that the test case uses a specific method or a specific attribute, you're allowed to do that. as you can see, some of this whole requirement and design is kind of intertwined with each other. So sometimes it is difficult to tease it apart. In terms of the UML, look for formatting. Make sure that the things that are has a requirement, has a relationships, use the diamonds. Things that are is a relationship, use the arrows. That the specific classes appear to be complete. If you're thinking, okay, the class is supposed to do such and such, and you're seeing that it has one attribute and one method, well, you know, that may not be a complete class yet, right? The person designing it may not have thought all the way through it. So sometimes I get UML diagrams that are clearly largely incomplete. That doesn't mean the UML diagram that the person submits is going to actually be the one that's the end resulting one for the code, but it means that they've made an honest attempt at putting some thought into the design so that they're ready after the P3 deliverable, they're ready to begin their code development. I wouldn't spend hours on this. I know from long experience that when I get involved in reading students' reports, I can really get lost in them if I allow myself and spend way too much time. So kind of time box yourself. I'm gonna give myself a half an hour for this, which should be plenty. And I don't care how you make your comments. If they give you a Word document and you want to make the comments in Word, that's fine. If you want to make the comments in a reply, well, you're going to have to reply, but whether you attach the document with the comments embedded or whether you make your comments visible in the reply by, say, cutting and pasting pieces of text out of the document and then commenting about it, all of that's fine. The point is, you're going to get some benefit by practicing reviewing other people's documents. And then you're also going to get some benefit because other people are giving you hopefully helpful advice on how to improve the product. So are there questions about what I'm asking here? Okay. What if somebody doesn't submit a document for your review? I cannot penalize you for that. I can penalize them, but I cannot penalize you for that. So your grade does not suffer if they completely ditch the assignment. What if they turn in something that is clearly not ready for review? That's something that you can note. This is not ready for review. And then you can throw in 3 other, how many, I'm asking you for 4, right? 3 other comments about how you would, what specifically needs to be improved or fleshed out or included. Missing UML diagram, that's a comment, right? That's an improvement. Missing test cases, that's a comment. I'm pausing for questions. Okay. My rubric says 2.5 points per comment. That's because you're going to make a total of 8, and 8 times 2.5 gets you to 20. But those of you who took me before for other classes and maybe remember the beginning of the semester, I'm not a fan I'm a fan of integer-based grading. So I'll always round it up. If you have 16.5 points, we're going to round that up to 17. All right. I'd also like to remind you guys, fortunately, people are doing it, and I'm haven't had a chance to look in detail at all of them. But for most of the assignments, I have posted quizzes that are not a fan. For most assignments, I have these extra credit quizzes where I'm asking you how much effort, how many hours did you spend? They're available for just a couple days after the assignments are due. So these are due for the homeworks and for the project deliverables. And it just asks you one question, which is how many hours did you spend? You can't get it wrong. I think it's 3 points extra credit.
Yeah. Where do you find those? Are they under assignments or?
Well, I don't know. People are finding them. So
I've found them like once under the to-do list, but I can't find them anywhere else. So if they don't pop up there.
All right, the one for homework 5. Let's see, extra credit quiz, homework. I think I didn't do it. I may not have done one for homework 5. I'm looking at them all here, right? We've got homework 2, homework 3, homework 6. Yeah, I don't think I did one for homework 5. And the reason was you haven't seen them for the past few assignments. Whoops. Oh boy, we're going to.
Could you maybe open the quiz tab to students so that we could select them?
I'm uncomfortable doing that.
Okay.
So let's see here. We've got, what's the next one? The next one is going to be not available until October 21st. This one for the P3 effort. So when you turn in your P3, it should open up. They should only open up for, I think I keep them up for 2 days after like the day it's due and then 2 days after. So let's see, homework. If we look at this, I've got homework 2, homework 3, but homework 4 and homework 5 did not have them. So that's one reason you didn't see them. Did you see it for the P2? Okay. So if you don't see them, I just didn't create them. The reason I didn't do 4 and 5 is where it wasn't homework 4. And I get these mixed up, guys, but I believe homework 4 and homework 5 were, homework 4 was requirements and tests and homework 5 was UML or vice versa. And so I was more interested for the homeworks, I'm more interested in the programming efforts. For the P2s, for the project deliverables, I'm interested in all kinds of things. Okay, there we go. So that's why. So you should see for every one of the project deliverables, you'll see it. And for what's the remaining homeworks here? I should have homework 6 and 7 and 8. And then homework 9, I believe, is an extra credit. So I didn't ask about that one, but you should see it for homework 6, 7, and 8. And doing these consistently, I think that's 3 points apiece. Grade breakdown, I've got extra credit. Time estimates for homework, time estimates for project. Oh, okay, so I've actually got 13 total at 3 points apiece. So, there's 39 points of extra credit. I also bribe you for the course evaluation at the end of the course. Okay, so they do appear to be showing up properly. The problem, the only thing that was confusing was there really wasn't one for homework 4 and homework 5. And let's see. When they're, how do things look from the student view? When things are not visible yet, do you see them in your calendar in the future, even though they're not available to you yet?
I don't think we can see the quizzes, but they do. The only place that I can find them is if they pop up under the to-do list on the right side. And if you exit out of it, then you can't ever get it back.
What do you mean if you, okay, so if I go to student view, to do, what about the calendar? Does it show up in your calendar?
They don't show up on calendar for me.
Okay, this is me also learning the details of Canvas. All right. All right, I'm going to try to remember to pay attention to that as when these things become visible. Calendar. This is going to be a mess. So we're saying P3, yeah, and then there's nothing due for discussions or for surveys. Okay. All right. So one of the things I need to do then is when I do that week ahead announcement is to remind people about it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds good. Or could you like include a link in the week ahead thing to the quizzes?
I can't view it. A leak, I can't view it easily, so I'm not going to mess with it. If I can figure out how to make a link, I can do that. Yeah. I should be able to. And I'm writing this down. Okay. Okay, now once the P3 deliverable is in, let's stop there. Are there questions about what I'm expecting for the P3 deliverable? Okay. You know, one thing I could do with those surveys that I could try, which would be, I think it would be annoying for everybody involved, but it would highlight on your thing. Right now I have them as ungraded surveys. If I made them graded surveys worth 0 points, I wonder how that would work out. The thing I don't like about that is that I don't know how your view is when you look at what the grade section on Canvas. It's already pretty hideous. Adding like 13 new columns effectively for no reason is a little worrisome to me. But maybe that's a way to make sure it's heightened visibility for everybody. Okay. Questions about P3 first. Are you fairly clear about what I want, even if you're not 100% sure of what you're, even though if you don't have it done yet,
Is it okay if all of our requirements come from like one user story?
I think I said you have to have Yeah, there's no, yeah, that's no problem. That's right. That's no problem. And then the test cases, though, you have to have 3 per requirement. But yes, you can have all requirements from one user story.
Okay.
Which is not crazy to have 5 requirements for one user story. Okay. Do you guys feel like you're on track with your P3 deliverable? And if you're not, how can we help you?
For me personally, I just know I need more time to work on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you can see, since I didn't even put out a week ahead this week, last Friday, I appreciate that time is tough. Yeah, time. I'm going to come back to time in a little bit once we're done with P3 discussion. Okay. Okay. All right. So once the P3 is in, then it's finally time to write code. And the idea, oops, I'm on the wrong. There's too many things on my screen. All right. So once P3 is in, right, that's going to be that Wednesday. And then to get in your first, right, that's about, I think it's 10 days. So same trick, right? Here's what's good about this. It's hard to get all the time in to do P3, but you have control over how much time you're going to dedicate to P4 because you have 10 days. You've already estimated how many hours you think each of your user stories are going to take. So you can just figure out, okay, in those 10 days, I realistically have 8 hours that I can spend on this, 6 hours I can spend on this, 10 hours I can spend on this, and then pick your users, pick your user stories accordingly. Take out as much of a bite of your user stories, starting with the first highest priority, next priority, next priority. So you have a little bit of control over that. Okay, let's keep talking about P3 for a minute. Yeah. Any other issues or questions or concerns about P3? All right, then once you get into P4, like I said, you have a little bit more flexibility with your time because that's the whole point of the agile process is bringing in the user stories. Of course, by the end of the semester, you should realistically think that your project, the programming portion of your project is going to take, a good low end number, I'd say, is 30 hours. Of course, the upper number, unfortunately, is unbounded. But if you find that you're spinning your wheels, don't keep spinning your wheels. Reach out for help. Reach out to the TAs or myself or other people in your class. One of the things I'm hoping happens with the peer group is you start to feel comfortable asking them questions ahead of time. So for example, while you're developing code in the P4 deliverable, which is basically a code drop with the agile tracking sheet, while you're doing the P4, I'll have a discussion page open for your group for that, so you can do peer review there. And if you're doing discussion during those 10 days, hey, I'm trying to do this, do you guys know how to do that? Then that would serve as the discussion group, right? That's all I need to see. Other than that, if there's no discussion prior, it'll be similar to this, except I think do it after the fact so there's not such a time crunch. You post your code and then the other 2 people comment on your code. But we can do that after the deliverable. You can always fix it in the next deliverable. So we'll have this peer group activity for the P3 deliverable 4, 5, and 6. If you guys give me feedback that it was really not structured well the first time around, then we'll try to figure out how to adapt it. And again, I'm trying to do an online equivalent of what I would do in a face-to-face class, which is literally walk around the room and sit down next to you and say, show me what you got. And also have students work in groups doing that. Okay, let's talk about time. How are the labs going, first of all? Is it a time sink? Does it seem reasonable? Or is this, labs aren't too bad.
Pretty
They're
reasonable.
bad, but they're not too bad. Last one was pretty fun working on the GUI. Yes, right. Okay, reasonable. Normally a lab is going to be, 2 hours of actual lab time, right? If you're in a face-to-face situation, and then you can add 1 to 2 hours pre and post lab. So, potentially 4 hours worth of lab per week, potentially. And so if you're finding that you really are spending 4 hours of lab a week, that's probably about right. Hopefully, I'm saying that as a top end, really. Hopefully it's less than that. Okay. How about other things? I'm assuming that, the point of the quizzes is not to be a time sink, but just going through the notes, the lectures every week, I'm assuming you're spending, if you're not in this class, right, in addition to the 3 lecture hours a week that you choose to attend, if you go to these 3, you're probably spending less time on the uploaded material. But overall, are we looking at, forget the assignments, forget the homeworks, forget B2, just keeping up with course material, are we looking at 3 or 4 hours a week for that? Okay, good, good. Okay, then when we add in the homework and the project, right, then we're looking at the homeworks again are designed to be 1 to 2 hour activities, ideally, right? That's the ideal case. As we know, the upper bound is, there's no upper bound. So as long as you are managing the concepts okay, and you're doing the coding, and you can see with the hare and hound, you're actually developing, you're developing a mini project, kind of equivalent to the sheep and sheepdog game in terms of complexity. But the idea is we feed it to you in these little snippets where you're building it a piece at a time. So the whole thing should be 2 hours at a time, that kind of thing. Just in terms of homework, I can look at the surveys and see the ones that I've looked at were hitting what I thought. There is always a couple people that are, it took me 6 hours, and that's normal. There, that we're always going to have, that's always going to happen to somebody in the classroom. And, you might be bouncing along, oh, I did it in 2 hours, I did it in 2 hours, I did it in 2 hours, and the next one is the 6 hour one, and you're the person taking the 6 hours. Again, my recommendation is you hit that 2 hour limit for homework. Please think, okay, this is beyond what the design is. Maybe I should ask for help. Can you see one of the major themes of this course is ask for help? We're all reluctant to do that. All right, the same trick with your P4, 5, and 6, you're going to designate how much time you're going to spend for those. And if you find that you're getting way behind schedule, then, ask for help. And do that in your peer group, and do it with the TAs and myself. Okay, this is all just logistics stuff, getting feedback. I was in a faculty meeting yesterday, and some faculty are hearing feedback from students that because for most classes, at least when they're online, You know, they encourage us to have a small thing due every week or a small couple of things due every week. And then students are reporting, you know, every week it's like a race because I've got 5 classes. So I've got, you know, 20 small things due every week. And it's just a race just to finish everything every week and stay on top of classes. So I didn't know if y'all were experiencing that also, or if that was just a couple students. I think we're all learning time management as we go here. Okay. All right. Then the last topic that I wanted to bring up was the reviewing the pirates, which we talked about the other day. So I didn't know if there were any questions unresolved about that, or if you had any confusions or just curiosity about this. And this is an opportunity just to expand on that. I think this is a fairly good model for your project. I'm not claiming it's the greatest design in the world. Yeah, it is a race. Yeah, yeah.
And that's like the complexity that you expect our things to be.
Yeah, so some people are gonna, you know, what I love about this class is some people do these really wildly sophisticated, over enthusiastic projects, which I encourage, but then I always say, you know, scale it back because, you know, you can fill out the rest of it after the semester. And some people do things that are about this level. You know, if you hit all 4 of those requirements, you know, this has a GUI, this has inheritance. I'll put, I don't have exception handling in here now, but I can do that. I don't have file IO in here now, but I can do that. You hit those 4 things, and then this is as much of a complexity project as you want. The problem is it anything that you're interested in? So I've seen students that were remarkably efficient in creating small projects that hit every single requirement that's asked of them. And I have seen students
a quick question on P3 for the GUI.
Yeah.
How much do we have to show about the GUI and the UML for P3?
Like what I did, right? I only put stuff that's really interesting, so I didn't put a whole bunch of detail. And the problem is with most GUIs, you know, mine were super simple here, right? With most GUIs, it's actually complex because you might have, you know, 3 or 4 buttons and 2 and 3 text fields and a bunch of different shapes. And so what you get is a really complex UML that provides virtually no information as to really what's happening with the code. So I'm fine with just, you have this generic GUI box. If you choose to expand the UML for your GUI, then I would say do it this way, where there's a box on one page and then you can expand it on a separate page. If you try to pull it all on one, you'll have so many classes on one page that you can't read any of the attributes or methods for any of the classes.
So at least we have to have that main GUI thing, but we don't have to have more.
Even if it's not called that, even if you just have a box that says GUI details not shown. But the reason that it was important for me to have it, right, you need to have some top level identified. And the reason it was important for me to have it is because I actually have this pane, which is technically part of the GUI, right, is also doing a lot of work because it contains the game manager. So that thing is actually doing something, right? It's got these real live methods like move all ships and reposition all ships, but move all ships, it's in there twice, and create game animation. You know, move all ships, all it does is pass that along to the game manager, right? But there is functionality in that pane. So even though it's a GUI element, because it's at that boundary between the GUI and the controller, there's functionality in it. And so that's one reason I broke it out and gave it an actual honest to gosh class in the class diagram. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you just have a rectangle that's sitting there being a rectangle, probably not that interesting. You know, that would go in this box and never be mentioned, right? It's just, hey, there's a GUI here. Now, having said that, in terms of documenting your code with the UML, the GUI doesn't get much attention. As I said, you can choose to, but I would do it on a separate page because they do get ugly fast. And even though it's not shown on the GUI, that doesn't mean you don't spend any time on the design, because as I mentioned a couple times this week, if you're going to lay out a GUI, my technique is to draw it on a piece of paper first. And then I start naming, you know, once I have the visual of it, then I start naming the parts, you know, and if I have to have a pane within a pane, I'll draw the, you know, the box within a box and name them and start thinking about, you know, how am I going to construct this thing? So there is value added in designing your GUI ahead of time in terms of where you're going to put all your widgets and, you know, that kind of thing. Then you can start coding it. But to put all that detail in the UML, like I said, it takes up a lot of real estate and doesn't add a terrible amount of value in terms of code functionality. Oh, by the way, in yours, you don't need the key, right? This is a uses. You don't need that. This is for instructional purposes, right? You don't need that for your UML diagram. If you include it, no problem. If you don't include it, no problem. But, you know, I have a dual purpose with everything that I do because it's as much about instruction as it is about the design of the game. Any other questions?
I'm still slightly confused by the player ship and the alien ship. So they don't have any attributes and methods. They just take everything from the generic ship.
That's correct. That's correct. And the reason is actually a bad design decision on my part. My generic ship, if we look at the code, and we're not gonna, I went ahead and created all of the correct movement activities as if it was a player ship. And what I should have done is kept the movement activities, the movement methods blank. And then if I had done that and then I modified the move in the player ship, then I would have mentioned that, you know, in the player ship itself, you know, to indicate that I overwrote the method. And the same thing would be for the alien. Now, if I actually flesh out the alien, right now it has nothing in it. If I flesh out the alien, since the alien is going to clearly move different than the player ship, I would throw the move ship method in, you know, listed also an alien ship because it's overwritten. But you're right. The way I did it, they are literally just copies of the generic ship at this point in my game design. Notice I don't even have an alien ship in the, you know, the game manager doesn't even create an alien ship yet.
And the UML does not have to include getters and setters, correct?
Yeah, right. And it's preferable not to, because again, they take up a lot of real estate and they don't add any value in terms of it.
Okay, because on homework 5, and I put it in the comments after it was graded, I got points taken off because I didn't include getters and setters.
Oh, okay. All right, send me a Canvas message about that.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. All right, guys. I will see you on Monday. And we'll begin the second to the last module before we clear the decks for your project work. Have a great weekend.